Arbitrary and indefinite detentions, torture, no trials, and now capital punishment. Israel's recent approval of a bill legalizing the death penalty for Palestinians is just a glimpse into the various ways Palestinians are targeted by Israel's prisons and courts. Here are the brutal realities Palestinians face under Israel's notorious detention system. There are currently nearly 10,000 Palestinians held in Israeli prisons and detention facilities across Palestine's occupied West Bank. Of those in detention, 3,532 are held without charge or trial under what is known as administrative detention. 84 of those being held are female, 400 are children, and 299 are serving life sentences. Administrative detainees, including women and children, can be held for renewable 6-month periods based on secret evidence that neither they nor their lawyers are allowed to see. The practice, borrowed from British-mandated emergency laws, allows Israel to hold Palestinians indefinitely without charge or trial. Israel is the only country in the world that tries children in military courts, often denying them their basic rights. About 500 to 700 Palestinian children are detained and prosecuted in Israeli military courts each year, some as young as 12. The most common charge is stone throwing, punishable under military law by up to 20 years in prison. Since October 7, 2023, Israel released 2,000 detained Palestinians as part of a deal with Hamas in 2025 that has in the meantime detained approximately 30,000 other Palestinians. But how does Israel's detention strategy work? In Palestine's Gaza, Israeli soldiers pull men and boys from evacuation lines. In Palestine's occupied West Bank, Israeli forces conduct near daily raids, often justified as security operations. Palestinians from both territories are then transferred to detention sites inside Israel and held for months, often without communication with the outside world. The system relies on a mix of British-era emergency regulations, Israeli military orders, and laws such as the incarceration of unlawful combatants law, used particularly for Gaza detainees to enable prolonged detention while bypassing standard legal protections. But none of this is new. Since 1967, Israeli forces have detained more than 1 million Palestinians. What does an average day inside an Israeli prison look like for a Palestinian? According to Palestinian civil society groups and international human rights organizations, prisoners are subjected to severe abuse, beaten multiple times a day, held in cells the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency describes as unfit for human life, blindfolded and bound, isolated from the outside world, stripped of clothing, starved, attacked by dogs, sexually assaulted, and psychologically tortured. At least 100 Palestinians have died in prison since October 7 due to torture and medical neglect. Others have reportedly been found in mass graves, bearing signs of torture and execution.
وين العالم؟ وين العالم؟ احنا صرنا بنتعلم وبتصدعوا وجنان جنازير عليهم ويديهم كلبشات ويديهم كلها مجرحة وصدره حاله ووجهه مكسر. ليش هيك؟ ليش هيك؟ أما هم أسراهم باخذوهم معززين مكرمين ولابسين ومتلبسين وماكلين وشاربين.
One of the most alarming yet often overlooked aspects is the role of medical professionals. Israeli prison doctors and psychologists have been documented as complicit in torture, approving detainees as fit for interrogation that usually involves psychological intimidation or physical torture, and allowing abuse to continue in violation of the Hippocratic Oath. The World Medical Association adopted international guidelines under the 1975 Declaration of Tokyo, outlining that physicians must not participate in, condone or facilitate torture under any circumstances. The declaration also states that doctors must not provide information or treatment that could facilitate torture. Yet, decades of documentation from Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Physicians for Human Rights Israel, and Al-Damir shows that Israel routinely violates this ethical code. Complicity also extends to systemic medical negligence. Reports describe a lack of proper care, failure to document abuse, and the use of underqualified staff performing procedures beyond their expertise. Some testimonies report amputations carried out due to injuries caused by prolonged restraint, such as tightly bound zip ties. And at facilities like Sedeteman Prison, whistleblowers have described a system where medical staff operate without accountability, sometimes not even signing their names on medical records. They stated that Israeli medical teams, alongside the Ministry of Health, were operating in violation of Israel's incarceration of unlawful combatants law, an Israeli legal framework used to justify the indefinite detention of Palestinians that in itself contravenes international law. However, despite international obligations, Israeli doctors are rarely held accountable. Instead of reporting abuse, many are documented as enabling it, directly or indirectly.
سنة كامل بالسجن قسما بالله العظيم أولادي نسيت شخصيتهم من العذاب، إيش بدي أقول لك؟ ليلة أنا بعيط بس مش نسيت أولادي، نسيت أولادي من العذاب، إحنا في كن
شفنا أيام لا عمري في حياتي كانت أنا كنا نتمنى الموت أكثر من نفسي. أنا لو بعرف إنه بده يصير فيها زي هيك خلقنا مدة أحسن صراحة. أقول لك معاناة في النوم، معاناة في الشرب، معاناة في الحمام، معاناة في كل حاجة، كل شيء كانت معاناة.
While often framed as a recent development after CNN's 2024 investigation into Sedeteman's torture camps, torture in Israeli prisons predates October 7. It has long been described by Palestinians as a tool of control embedded in the system itself. Walid Daqa became a Palestinian icon, having spent 38 years inside Israeli prisons. During those nearly 4 decades, his wife managed to give birth to their daughter Milad, after Daqa was able to smuggle his sperm out of prison. However, he died in 2024 due to medical neglect, without ever being able to see his daughter. A recent report by UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese further highlights the continuity of these practices, describing torture as increasingly normalized.
Since October 2023, torture has effectively become state policy, sustained by a torturous culture that is socially produced, politically defended, and publicly normalized. And my report also shows that torture extends far beyond the prison walls in what can only be described as a torturous environment imposed by Israel across the entire occupied Palestinian territory. Israel has effectively been given a license to torture Palestinians because most of your government, your ministers have allowed it.
Now, Israel is attempting to formalize what critics say is already happening: the execution of Palestinians through a proposed death penalty law. The law mandates capital punishment for Palestinians and Palestinians only, who have allegedly committed acts that result in the death of an Israeli citizen. Palestinians who are tried according to a separate judicial and penal system as part of Israel's apartheid regime face a conviction rate exceeding 96%. Human rights activists argue that under such a segregated system, Palestinians have virtually no chance of a fair trial.
ואני אומר את זה בתור מי שלקח מהם את ההפקדות, את הקנטינות, את האוכל, את הסיורים, את הטיולים בחצר, את הלימודים האקדמיים. בתור מי שלקח מהם הכל, אני רוצה גם לקחת מהמחבלים את החיים.
But execution is not new in Palestinian history. On June 17, 1930, under British Mandate rule, 3 Palestinians, Muhammad Jamjoom, Ahmed Hijazi, and Ata al-Zir, were executed in Acre prison following the Al-Buraq uprising. Their execution marked one of the earliest uses of capital punishment against Palestinians resisting colonial rule. Since then, detention has remained central to the Palestinian struggle. According to Palestinian authorities, Since 1967, around 1 million Palestinians, roughly 1 in 5, have been imprisoned at some point in their lives, whether for months, years, or even decades. For many families, arrest is not an exception, but rather an expectation. It has fragmented communities, entrenched trauma, and shaped the collective Palestinian memory. Marwan Barghouti, often referred to as Palestine's Nelson Mandela, has become one of the most prominent faces of a system that has unjustly imprisoned generations of Palestinians. Now 66, the political leader is reportedly at immediate risk in Israeli presence. According to his lawyer, he has faced a pattern of escalating abuse, including 3 attacks in recent weeks. One in which prison guards set a dog on him, another during a transfer, and a severe beating that left him bleeding for hours without medical care. His case reflects the broader reality faced by thousands of Palestinians held in Israeli detention today, where imprisonment, abuse, and uncertainty define daily life.
Everybody in this world knows that Marwan Barghouti is fighting for peace. I am a peace man.
Israel succeeded to arrest my body, but not my head and not my soul. They will not succeed to do that. They will not break our will for independence and for freedom.